White Oak has been called the most important real estate development in East County's history, and it's finally moving forward after years of stagnation. I'll start with our county executive. What makes this moment different from previous development attempts at this site?
There are a couple of things I think that are different about it. One is I think the capabilities of MCB are very different than what we've been working with, and that they actually have access to the capital. They understand the development process in Montgomery County, at least know how to work with it, and that they're really determined to deliver something. We had a master plan we went through. It got approved. It was supposed to be approved this now and it'll be built tomorrow, and all these things were going to happen, and nothing happened. No shovel ever went in the ground. And David brought a different approach to this. And I looked a little bit at his track record, and knew enough to know that he could play at this league and play at this level, and I had a level of confidence that he could work, and we had a really productive first meeting. And I realized this is something that's actually going to happen now. Through all the period of long stagnation, I had kept $40 million in my budget because we'd made a commitment that we'd put $40 million into this project for infrastructure when it was time to do that. And having a developer that finally has arrived who can do that, that money's sitting there waiting to go into this project. So that and the TIF I think are going to make a lot of difference. We'll probably talk more about the TIF later, but that's what makes this moment different. The person you're working with is very different.
David?
These projects are all really, really hard. I think anyone who's involved in projects like this knows that. So, it really is about collaboration and feeling comfortable that you're going to have the support you need. And so much thanks go to the county executive and, of course, Kristen Mink. This is in her district. And what you find is whenever you're approaching a project like this, there's the part where you're making the deal with the seller or the owner, and then there's the part where you're putting the money together, and then there's the part where you're meeting with the county or the governing body. And walking into that meeting and having a group of folks who really wanted to see this happen, who understood how important this was for East County, was really critical. Because these projects are really hard, they're super expensive just to get to the point where you actually can put a shovel in the ground, and it's a big challenge. And so we, as a firm, are familiar with hard projects, for better or for worse, and we are used to coming into situations, particularly in what I would call disinvested communities or areas where there hasn't been enough investment, and then challenging ourselves and all the other players who have to be involved to say, let's get something done. And so a lot of it is not just us doing a deal, it's us convincing everyone that it's time to collaborate because the deal is ready to be done. And I think this is an instance where we felt like those opportunities were available to us, and things were aligned. And look, there's still a lot of work to do. We're not there yet. But that's sort of what made the opportunity make sense for us to pursue.
I'm going to actually go off script a little bit because I realize that while a lot of the audience has probably been following this very closely, it's possible some may not have. David, can you maybe ask both of you, a little bit of your maybe one-line pitch on what Viva White Oak is? And then maybe just your vision, both of your vision for it, and then we can dive into some of the details.
You want to go?
Yeah, I can start with Mark. Yeah.
Sure. I think, in terms of the East County, which has long felt totally neglected, things were done on the west side of Montgomery County that were never done on the east side of the county, and it was treated in a very different way. This was an opportunity to kind of complete the projects that had been waiting on the east side of the county. When I got elected, the Burtonsville Shopping Center was abandoned, and people have been waiting years for that to get rebuilt. You're laughing, I know where you live. And and the project in White Oak Center, Town Center, that project was going nowhere, and the project at the New Hampshire Gateway was not going as fast as it was going to be. And so we managed to get our folks in the department, in my departments, to work with the developers to get those projects through so they would actually happen. And the one thing that was left out here was this project, which is probably the biggest. There is so much you can do with 280 acres. And, we had a lot of ambitions because there are a lot of things that are needed on the east side of the county, not just another shopping center. It's going to be the location, hopefully, of the East County campus of Montgomery College. We have not had a presence in this part of the county. So this brings a lot of things together that are important for that part of the county and important for us, and I think is a signal to everybody else that we really are serious about playing in this water. We're willing to get deals done, and I think this was a good example of that.
I always say, so we redeveloped the old A&P in White Oak into a ShopRite, and then redid it again into a Giant, for those of you who are familiar with the area. And I drove past this site 100 times. And I had no idea that sitting back there behind what looked like a big old gravel machine was 280 acres of land. And I call it the biggest site I've ever seen hiding in plain sight. It was just hiding. And it was hiding because there weren't people willing to make the necessary economic investments to bring it to life. So you have, and I wish we had some pictures because they're really cool, but it's 280 acres of prime land that is going to provide a huge potential development opportunity. So we are talking about thousands of residential units. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of feet of retail. We are talking about life sciences. And we are talking about true master planned, mixed use, multi-phase development. You don't really get opportunities like this in a developed state like Maryland, so close to the nation's capital. You don't get that very often. So it really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a major investment. And so it's important to understand the scale of what we're talking about. This is a, $2.5 to $4 billion project that will happen over the next decade. It is a monster. And it's the kind of thing you can get excited about that will have a massive impact, not just on the site itself, but on the surrounding area, the tax base, and all the opportunities that come along with a project of this scale.
Thank you. So you had referred to the TIF, so I'll just jump into that because I know it's something a lot of people are talking about. So Mark, this is Montgomery County's first ever tax increment financing proposal. What gave you the confidence to pursue this tool at this moment, and how does it align with your long-term vision for equitable economic development in East County and beyond?
So for a long time, you hear about TIFs every once in a while, but Montgomery County never done one. I was interested, so early on, years before I met you, we actually sat down in my office and brought in people who are actually experts in TIFs and how to structure them. I've read the good stories and I've read the bad stories about TIFs. I've read TIFs that have really blossomed and led to really impressive developments, and I've read about TIFs where government got taken to the cleaners. And I did not want to get taken to the cleaners, but it was good to know that you didn't have to get taken to the cleaners. So it was important to us to do a little research without actually having a specific project in mind, just to put that in the toolbox. So when we first met, it came up pretty quickly. My thought was, special taxing district, which frankly the county had used to develop Germantown, was built on a special taxing district, if not a special taxing district, a TIF. And I was open to going either way, and we agreed that we would bring in, Unicap was our advisor. They're paid for by the county, we are their client. I have more confidence in a relationship when the person giving me advice is my client, or I'm their client. No, they're my client. No, I'm their client. I forget how this relationship works at this point. We're both embedded in this together. And we did our due diligence, and they did their due diligence, and we walked out of it feeling like this thing is going to make sense. If it gets developed the way he's talking about developing, it's going to generate a ton of revenue for the county. It's going to create jobs. It's going to change perceptions of the East County. There's so many positive things on it and so many reasons to be optimistic, because he's not kind of trying to cram this into a place surrounded by other stuff. This is like having a naked tableau in front of you and saying, what can I paint on this thing? And if I do this right, it's going to be beautiful. So between getting the confidence that the people who did the research for us had done it right, and the evidence they brought us back was solid, and his interest in doing it this way and knowing how to do this, I felt comfortable with it. It was the right thing to do.
And I'll just say, I think, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think sometimes TIF becomes a dirty word, mostly because people don't really understand. We really think about it as public infrastructure bonds, right? It's really just public infrastructure capital that's financed directly from the project that it's supporting, as opposed to across the board from the, let's say general obligation bonds issued by the county. And so it's really important to understand that it's all based on what we're going to build. It's not taking money away from some other project, some other competing project. It's really just about what we're building. And when you look at a site like this, you wonder, one of the reasons why it hasn't been developed, you got to spend 150 to 200 million just to get the roads and the sewers and all the infrastructure that's public infrastructure into the site, right? We all live on a road, well, maybe not all of us, but most of us live on a road in a house, right? Or an apartment building. Those roads were put in by a county or a city or wherever you live. Somebody's got to pay for that. And the beautiful thing about a TIF financing, if you can make the math work, which we can here, is that no one's paying for it except for the project itself. And I think that's a really important concept. And I want to be 100% clear with you. Without the TIF financing, this project doesn't happen, and no project of its scale could happen without this sort of partnership with the county. And it's a heavy lift to explain it to people, but I got to tell you, once they listen, they take the time to understand, the light bulb almost always comes on, and they say, wow, now I get it. We're able to get this project that we want without taking from another project or somehow obligating the county or the municipality in any kind of untoward way. So that's what makes it advantageous, and quite frankly, as you've noted, without it, there's no project.
And I would, I have seen some of the renderings. I would encourage folks to check out I think the Viva White Oak site and get a sense of what this could look like, because it's pretty exciting for the county. I'll follow up with you, David, though. You talked about kind of your experience driving past the site, and that it's also, you see all the possibilities, but also that it's a monster project. At least sounds like at least another decade, and I know how much time you've already spent on it. What convinced you it was worth the investment of time, money, maybe a little heartache along the way?
Heartache? This is easy. No, what convinced, look, first of all, you just start with Montgomery County. This is a place people want to be, right? You have retailers who want to be here, you have residents who want to be here, you have businesses who want to be here, but you have to build the product that they come to. So that's kind of where you start. Is there demand? Then you start to understand from that demand what kind of income can be generated from that demand. And, I hate to say it for all of us real estate guys, real estate's sort of the dumbest form of investment there is, right? We're basically investing in buildings and getting rent. That's kind of how it works. So what we have to understand is what that income is, and then what we can build it for, what it's going to cost, and can we deliver it, and can we finance it, and then will we have the support of the community who we need to use it, and the municipality that we need to approve it. So that's really what it is, bringing all those factors together. But it doesn't take a genius to understand that when you have this kind of density, you have the incomes, and then you have an area that hasn't received or had the opportunity for investment, if you are willing to do the work to put that investment in, you'll get a return on your dollars. You'll be able to raise the necessary capital to execute the project, and that's absolutely what we saw here. Remember, Cherry Hill Road, 29, FDA, it's all here. Now we have to invest in the site itself to see the fruits of our labor. So you can see it once you've laid it out. It's pretty easy to see what the opportunity is.
So just to give just the vision by some of the expected numbers, Viva White Oak is expected to deliver nearly 5,000 homes, 9,000 permanent jobs, and over 60 million in annual tax revenue. I'll start with Mark. Can you share how the community input shaped the county's approach to this deal and how it has influenced the development plans?
I think the community's biggest role was pre-deal, because this came up in the master plan for White Oak, and a very clear message. They didn't just want more housing development over, they wanted jobs on the east side of the county, because if you know anything about the east side of the county, everybody leaves the east side of the county to work. That's different than every other part of the county. And I think people felt that difference, and it really reflected as you were a bedroom community and you're going someplace else. And so people wanted something that would anchor it, something that would be stable, and so the job part of this was really important. They wanted a different mix of housing, not just more garden apartments. I mean, I'll say this bluntly, the county put a lot of lower income housing on the east side of the county because they would not put it anyplace else. A tradition which continues to some extent today. And that's a problem. And so they wound up without housing. I'm a kid who grew up in Einstein. I lived in the shopping mall in Wheaton. The East County doesn't even have a shopping mall. There is no proper place for a teenager to go and hang out and do the normal things that teenagers do, and that I spent my 3 years in high school doing. So, those are the kind of things that people know. I've got to go to Columbia to go shopping, or I've got to go to Wheaton, or I've got to go someplace off of Rockville Pike. So changing all that was really important. That's what they wanted. The original plans had some of that, but it was really aspirational, and like I said, none of it resulted in any shovel in the ground. He brought the capability to do that, and he brought a vision of what he was going to do that matched the aspirations of what people wanted. I think the slide getting the community acceptance was probably more like a celebration. When you walked in the room and you said, I'm ready to do this, my sense from people was they were amazed that somebody was actually ready to go forward, as was I.
And I'll kind of tweak the question too for you, David. I'm curious now, going forward, what has community input been, but also how will it continue to inform the efforts?
So we do, as a firm, it's kind of one of our things. We do a lot of community input. And community input is a challenging thing, or can be sometimes, because who's the community? What does that mean? And do you deal with every angry person who wants this or wants that? And how do you build consensus? Those are all tools I think we've really sharpened as a firm and gotten really good at sort of getting down to what do people really want to see and what's going to be effective. And you have to balance sort of the crazy things you hear, because if you just did straight community input, somebody made a joke once in our firm, you'd end up with bull riding in a senior center with a school on top, and that's not really economically viable. So it's really a matter of weaving together lots of things, and I see a bunch of our colleagues are here, and Carlos and Dory and Teresa and Daniel, and we met with a lot of people to get input, and it's actually been really good, and I think it's important. Now the input sort of ends up with two things. One part of the community engagement is getting ideas, and you actually do get a sense of what people need. You understand, hey, these are the things that are missing in the community that you just can't tell from, the surveys that we do and Google Maps and all that kind of stuff, right? But then on top of that, you also get buy-in, which is important, because we say this at MCB all the time. We can build anything, but if people don't use it, the project will fail. So part of our goal with community engagement is to really get people thinking about, wait a minute, this space is being built, and the space is being built for me to use and enjoy and be part of. And that's why we think, as a result, we came up with, we think things that are really important, like a vibrant central gathering place. I think we've heard that 1.6 trillion times. And then the right mix of programmed open spaces, and having local retail with national retail. Those are all the things that you sort of winnow down to as you get through the process. So we think the process was really good, and it will continue. We still go to meetings, and if folks want to reach out to us, they can reach out to us anytime. I think all that information, how to contact us, is on the website.
This week marks the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, one of the most devastating and costliest natural disasters in the history of this nation, and it killed 1,883 people. The federal response to this disaster under the George W. Bush administration was among the worst and most ill-prepared of all time. It was not something that was particularly noteworthy in a good sense. Over the last 20 years, thanks to research, technology, and innovative practices by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and partners like NASA, our nation is better positioned to predict, forecast, and prepare areas and residents in the path of severe weather events. However, for all the advancements that have been made since Katrina, President Trump is reversing this progress and deliberately threatening the safety of Americans, just as we're about to enter the most dangerous period of the hurricane season. A couple of weeks ago, a news story slipped by that deserved much more attention than it got. It was reported that the Trump administration is planning to crash and burn NASA's orbiting carbon observatory satellites, instruments that are still working, fully paid for, and capable of gathering climate data for at least another decade. This decision would literally destroy tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer investment and wipe out years of research that helps us understand greenhouse gas emissions, plant health, and the forces that are driving climate change. It also represents something much larger. It's another tack on science. Whether it's NASA, NOAA, NIH, FDA, USDA, or the EPA, we continue to see this administration undermine the work of scientists and researchers whose only mission is to inform, protect, and to serve the public. And as you've heard me mention before, this is not about reducing the size of the federal government. This is about dismantling science in order to reverse current protections and prevent further regulations. After all, if you don't know something, then you can't do anything about it. And that seems to be the Trump model. Let's be ignorant, because ignorance is bliss. Even if it's wrong, we can have some temporary bliss. This is no way to run a government. We also depend on NOAA's research to guide national policies on fossil fuels, automobiles, and industrial activity. When that science is gutted, it weakens our ability to hold polluters accountable and build a sustainable future for our children and our grandchildren. Instead of building our ability to be leaders and putting science to the service of our citizens, we're crippling our ability to protect people and the environment. Federal policy seeks to build an economy around fossil fuels, while our country and the rest of the world are working to replace them and develop the technology that will create the products needed to move forward. This is an enormous market, and America is going to be left on the outside looking in if we do not continue to support clean energy. Instead of being an industrial leader in global markets, we're going to be isolated, and we're going to be outside those markets. This combines bad climate policy with bad health policy and creates bad industrial policy that closes rather than opens doors for American ingenuity and productivity around the world. It's an economic dead end. I don't understand how the president doesn't get, for example, with electric vehicles, that the rest of the world is going full speed in this direction of electrification. And what he's trying to hold on to is to keep our behemoth auto industry still mired in the days of fossil fuels. There's not going to be a market outside the United States for the kind of vehicles that Trump imagines we're going to produce. And that's not good for American companies. So this is a backward approach to economic development and something that's not going to serve us well in the long end. Here in Montgomery County, the effects of what he's doing are direct. NOAA's been a major employer of Silver Spring. Hundreds of our neighbors have already lost their jobs. Thousands more across the country have been forced out, taking with them decades of knowledge and expertise. And these are the people who provide the weather forecasts we rely on, track wildfires and storms, and deliver the data that governments use to prepare for extreme heat, flooding, and drought. And I know, we've talked with you before about what we're doing with sensors to help us prepare better for drought and be able, not drought, but for flooding, and to be able to respond more quickly to that. In addition to the concern about the continued loss of federal jobs, we're also losing the accurate, reliable science that our county and the entire country rely on to keep us safe from severe weather events. That's outrageous and it's indefensible and it's not necessary. To help us understand the scope of this problem and what it means locally and nationally, I'm pleased to introduce Craig McLean. Craig's a Montgomery County resident and a former assistant administrator for research at NOAA. He has spent a career advancing public science and has seen firsthand the consequences of these cuts. Craig, thank you for your service to our nation, our oceans, and our planet, and thank you for joining us today. So I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ehrlich, and I appreciate your comments. And everything that you have said, I could just double down and endorse. So I believe you're on the right path. I believe that the Trump administration is on a misguided and wrong path, and it's harmful to the nation, but also it's harmful to Montgomery County residents. I'll start at the beginning with just a brief explanation of what NOAA is. Not everyone knows and understands where and what NOAA is. The agency was started in 1970 to do three principal things. One was forecast the weather and continue in the heritage of what was the Weather Bureau, then became the National Weather Service. The second was to manage marine resources, which is largely attributed to two parts of NOAA, the National Ocean Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service. A lot of our Maryland residents enjoy the recreational aspect and even commercial aspect of fisheries. That's managed by both the state and the federal government. But then the third leg of the stool was the research enterprise to answer the question, what is the relationship between the ocean and weather, or the ocean and the atmosphere? And that was started in 1970. This young agency, NOAA, built ships and satellites and aircraft and sensors to go out into the ocean and up into the atmosphere to study this. It's distinguishable from NASA in that NASA is a research agency and looking for satellite surveillance of planet Earth and other planets and beyond. But the overlap and the collaboration is extensive. But in NOAA, at the time, to answer the question, what's the relationship between weather and the atmosphere? Doing that for the past 50 years, we now know climate science. It's Earth system science, how these two interact, how the ocean makes weather, how weather impacts the ocean. We didn't set out to study climate science. In 1970, climate science was basically an artifact of geography. What is the altitude that bananas grow in the Andes? That was a climate question. Today, the climate question is, do atmospheric greenhouse gases continue to warm the Earth by how much, by what year? And we know that the climate science is proven. The Trump administration is trying to destabilize the public understanding by casting seeds of doubt into those discussions. And the rather disingenuous release just this past several weeks of a Department of Energy study by 5 scientists, as opposed to the thousands of scientists who have built the National Climate Assessment, which informs Montgomery County, informs the state of Maryland, informs the nation as to what future to expect in terms of our climate vulnerability, our climate resilience. What is our insurance rate going to be? What is the outlook for mortgages and real estate values in areas that could now be inundated or besieged with extreme weather? So that work is very important. And the Trump administration desires to undo, cancel, and shut down the climate laboratories. That includes the University of Maryland, shut down the cooperative institutes that NOAA operates, and the laboratories and programs that NOAA has. Not all of them, but a significant portion of them. The mindless approach here that was probably invigorated by the chainsaw-wielding cutter-in-chief, if you will, during the early days of the Trump administration, Mr. Musk with his DOGE team, was blind in terms of the impact of what those cuts would be. So we found a number of Montgomery County employees that work at NOAA headquarters and through other agencies, I would use the term extorted into departing the federal government, because the programs are targeted for elimination. The positions can be done away with, and people could lose what they had been working towards and had earned in the way of retirement benefits and other opportunities that underpin the federal employment that they have enjoyed. People left and departed as opposed to running the risk of losing their entire retirement benefits and others. So I see those as extorted departures. Here's a staggering factor for you. April 29th, April 30th, the last day that people left on what were buyout provisions offered by the federal government, lawful buyout provisions. 27,000 years of experience nationally left NOAA. 27,000 years of experience. So that's the entire mentor class that any new or up and coming employee has the benefit of relying upon. The Trump budget for 2026 would shut down every laboratory that NOAA has and every cooperative institute. That's a term of art. A cooperative institute, and I'll use the University of Maryland as an example. The university has competed for a status of being a federal recipient of federal funds for a period of 5 years, renewable for one more term, and then a recompetition takes effect 10 years after the initial award. NOAA relies extensively on the talent that comes from the universities, and others include Princeton, University of Miami, University of Washington, Scripps Institute, Woods Hole Oceanographic. Many universities around the country are part of this cooperative institute network. The Trump administration would shut all of these down, would lose at least 50% of the scientific contributions and the contributions of the federally employed scientists. Quite a few live in Montgomery County and the surrounding areas of Washington, Virginia, and other Maryland communities. Some commute into Silver Spring as far away as West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and it's remarkable where and how far people travel to come and serve and do these jobs. So the recklessness of the Trump administration, very concerning, much as Mr. Ehrlich has described. So the problem that's in front of us is that we obviously understand the national politics and how difficult it is for the Congress to go ahead and fight back against these mindless and reckless reductions. Now, I have to sing the praises of another Montgomery County resident, and that would be Congressman Jamie Raskin, who I have been at rallies with Congressman Raskin. I've been asked to speak after him and other members, including Senator Van Hollen as well. So we have some local heroes here at the county level, at the national level, through our level of representation. But we're short, apparently, on votes in the national level of governance in order to reverse some of these or challenge some of these trends. So it's a concerning notion for me. Now, what are the programs that are at risk right now? I'll mention several. The climate program inside of NOAA is not just research, it's also an application of that knowledge to share with the public. And these programs inform county, local, citizen community groups, state levels as to what is the vulnerability of a particular geography and what are the resilience steps that one can be taking. This is free information, free advice, and in many cases, jurisdictions don't have the funds to hire their own climate advice. They may not be as resource capable as Montgomery County might be, but these are resources available to the nation. That would be shut down because the Trump people do not like the term resilience. This is too far over the edge for them. But resilience is necessary for us when we realize that, let's just take, for example, the rainfall and inundation that we've seen here in Maryland. We've seen it in Texas, North Carolina, many other places around the country, New Mexico, Illinois. When we suffer a deluge, that deluge has to be accommodated by, for example, rainfall removal pipes and drainage that was designed 50 plus years ago for a weather norm that we do not experience today. Our norm is worse than it was at the time of construction. And we're burdened by that infrastructure and the bill to modernize that infrastructure. But resilience steps can mitigate some of that rather than just wring our hands and mourn the loss of citizens who might be lost in rapid rainfall and floods, as we did happen in this county, or as we did see in this county, not just a few short years ago. So these elements are concerning. The Sea Grant program, which has an installation in the county office not too far from where I'm speaking from in Olney, Maryland. But I believe Amanda Rockler is the watershed restoration specialist for the Sea Grant program and deals with many watershed issues to keep the quality of our water sound, our drinking water, but also that which runs in as an effluent into the Chesapeake Bay. The Coastal Zone Management Program is another one that has impact by the Trump reductions because those programs provide benefit to the nation. And lastly, I'll just mention the National Weather Service, which is inadequately prepared currently for the weather system that we are facing, for the weather series of systems that we're facing. The Weather Service forecasters are undertaking heroic measures to compensate for the reduction in personnel that the Trump administration has recklessly designed and caused the demise. You may have seen in the news that several hundred weather service vacancies will now be filled once the administration realized how far they cut into the talent of the National Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service, et cetera. So the forecasters are making historic and heroic measures to keep you safe, the kind of protection that they offered during the course of Hurricane Katrina, as Mr. Ehrlich mentions. But they can't keep doing that forever. And Trump realizes that they went too far and they need to hire back some people. It's a mistake they are not acknowledging, but their practices make that plain. So it's going to take us months to get the Weather Service back to the level of staffing that we need to have. But we can't keep weather forecasters on a wartime footing. There's a rational level of staffing that has to be played out across the country. So that's a progress that has been made by embarrassing the Secretary of Commerce, where NOAA resides, and the president's people into realizing they've gone too far. I'll just close by a little bit of background and understanding of where and how I got here. I'm originally from New Jersey. Please don't hold that against me. I came to Montgomery County because of my NOAA service. I've lived here with my wife for over 25 years, very comfortable in this community, very admiring of our county governance and the services that we enjoy. Many of my colleagues in NOAA are still here. Many of my colleagues have either retired by the extortion that I mentioned earlier or lost their jobs. The entire collection of unlawfully displaced and fired employees who were dismissed because they were probationary employees. In other words, they had been promoted within 2 years, so they were excised from the federal service. They have lost benefits. They still live in the county. They are due those benefits from the federal government, a very unsatisfactory nature. But my time of service, I started as a maritime officer. I became the captain of a research ship and sailed around the country and other parts of the world doing oceanographic science, and then migrated into both ocean diplomacy, climate diplomacy, and also the workings of our research enterprise in NOAA, which I retired from in 2022, where I was the director of research. So, Mr. Ehrlich, thank you for your consideration and an opportunity to address these issues. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't remember what Trump did the last time around with NOAA, but I know that when he tried to shut down NIH last time, the Republicans in Congress actually reversed it. And it's just hard to believe that the entire House and the entire Senate, that among all those Republicans, there's not anybody left who believes in science or who's bipartisan, that they've turned this into an ideological, tombstone for their party, that, they'll rest on the fact that science is bad. I don't get it. I mean, have you had any opportunity to talk to some of these congressmen and senators and ask them, how did you get here?
Several things, Mr. Ehrlich. Thank you. First off, yes, there are a good number of Republicans who I would say, right, I'm an oceanographer. Part of what I study in oceanography is invertebrates. There are a lot of invertebrates in the Congress, no backbone. They do not stand fast for what they might choose to believe in when they have to assert themselves as the visible person offering those views. Now, what happened in Trump 1 was a draconian budget that would have closed down many of the elements that we're talking about again here today, and the Congress didn't accept those reductions. What we've seen in Trump 2 is a similar refutation, if you will. The Congress, Republicans and Democrats, have said no to the proposed Trump cuts, but he's doing them anyway in the way that he spends the funds that have been appropriated. He's clawing back those dollars and shutting programs down by taking those dollars off the existing budget. So what I see happening is that many representatives and a few senators understand climate. They understand the risk to their constituents, but they don't feel they have the courage to speak out because they're afraid of not getting elected again. And that's a bad setting for a public representative, where you value your job more than you do the service to your constituents. That's what I think is happening in the lack of character and the devout cowardice that we see in the Republican side. In the anonymity of a continuous global vote in the House or the Senate, those budgets are coming through. So Trump will still cut these programs, even if those budgets are passed. The budgets that fund NOAA can be passed, but Trump, in his belief of the executive power, will claw back that money and continue to shut down and reduce programs.
I see, Mr. County Executive, I see that Judy Hirth has her hand up. She's with Greater Olney News. Good afternoon, Judy.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Mr. McLean, in your assessment, what will this have on the future of those who might want to go into the study of oceanography or weather or uh, other subjects associated with maritime or any of the jobs that NOAA might have employed? Could this have an impact on that sector of education?
Yes, I believe it will, but what I've already noticed, and in talking to presidents of universities and chairs of oceanography departments, there already has been a decline in the number of students in those disciplines, which is very alarming, given that we seem to have a crescendo of public concern over climate change, the state of the ocean, the resources, fisheries, and the like, the health of the ocean, the health of the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. Given all of these combined facets, there is a decline in the number of graduate students studying these subjects. I think this is going to exacerbate that outlook. Now, what will happen to those students that are currently in those tracks? I think they will wait with optimism for what happens in the next national election so that we might see some reversal and the pendulum start swinging back towards a more rational outlook. But the passion that people have for these jobs is not matched by the availability of these jobs. And the fact that the federal government is shrinking, whether it's in public health and medical research or whether it's in environmental research, EPA, NOAA, NASA, other agencies, US Geological Survey, all of these agencies are going to suffer. Now, I have to say, we have to be rational about this, that the size of the government periodically needs to have a review and reset. The Clinton administration did that, but they did it deliberatively, and they evaluated each position that was proposed to be taken off of the books. This time, it's just been with one big swath and paintbrush to just roll it over, and the unintended consequences were not of any concern to the people who are making those reductions. So to answer your question, yes, this will have a reduction, a chilling effect on the aspiration of our young student bodies to pursue these, which is, as Mr. Ehrlich said, the demise of American prosperity. Our science and technology has been the engine, and Montgomery County has been a seat of this to be driving technology and to be driving innovation. I think it's damaging and dangerous.